Hello, Mooncrafters. Welcome. This is Craft of Moon. Today we're talking about the solar eclipse that is going to be taking place in the sign of Virgo at the very last degree of the sign. This is taking place on September 21st, and in Pacific time it's going to happen around 1 p.m. I think it's like 12:54 p.m. is when the peak of the solar eclipse is expected to happen. Now, as you know, if you've been watching my channel over the past several months, I have been doing a lunar journey through the signs of the Zodiac for each lunation, the full moon and the new moon. And this is a little different from many of the other channels that are out there that focus on different planetary aspects that are taking place during the time of the lunation. This could be either the aspects, or they might focus on the direction, whether a planet is going retrograde or going direct. And there's a lot of great content and channels about that out there. And so what I've been working on over the last several months is I have been recording the journey of the moon from one lunation to the next. And I believe that's important because the moon is such an integral part of each and every single one of us. It represents a deep part of our psyche, of our emotional body, and how we relate to the world in general. And I believe that as we walk through the journey of the moon, which changes every lunation because there's different signs, her relationship to the nodes changes. So every lunation is a new journey. And so walking through that journey around the Zodiac is a way for us to connect to the movements of the moon and to understand how the movements of the moon relate to us in our day-to-day lives. Everybody has their own birth time, their own life that they're living, but we're all experiencing the moon at the same time. And how the moon interacts with us is what gives our life unique definition, unique purpose, and unique direction for where we are traveling in our life. So I've been really happy with the process of working through the lunation cycle in this way. And as most of you know, I do that without a chart in front of me. I have a narration that I have worked through, and I've been delivering that. This month, I'd like to try something a little bit new from suggestions that I've received. And so I'm going to be doing two videos. And this one that we're going to be doing today, or right now, this video that you're watching, I'm going to bring a chart up on the screen, and using the chart, I'm going to walk through day by day from the last full moon to this new moon eclipse, and then again from this new moon eclipse to the next full moon. And so you'll see as I move around the chart day by day how the moon shifts and moves signs and interacts with other planets. So that's going to be this video, and it's going to be very much oriented. I'll be narrating the moon as she moves, and it'll just be very what we'll be talking about, what's in front of us, what's going on in the chart in front of us. And this is the process that I do myself as I prepare for the other videos that I do a longer narration for. I'm also going to be recording that other narration. And so what I would like is, if you feel up to it, no pressure, but if you feel up to it, maybe watch both videos and like the one that you prefer, or comment on the one you prefer, or however you would like to interact with it. But if you do something that helps me understand which style you think is better or more relevant for you in your daily life, then that'll help me to make sure that I'm crafting the kinds of videos that connect with you, my audience. So let's go ahead and get started for this. We're talking about the new moon solar eclipse in Virgo, the second new moon in Virgo this year. This new moon is taking place in September of 2025 on September 21st. So let's go ahead and flip open to the chart and see where it takes us. All right, so you should see here in front of us the chart. And just to highlight here, we have the moon in Pisces opposite to the sun in Virgo. So this was the full moon that took place on September 7th. I don't know if you can see the date on this screen. Yeah, there it is. September 7th. So about a couple weeks before the new moon. And this was also an eclipse. This was a lunar eclipse. And let me change my tool to my arrow tool. And you can see that the moon is going to be moving this direction on her travels around the zodiac. So we're going to be walking this direction. The moon is going to be moving that way. And the first thing we'll see is immediately the moon is going to cross over the north node of the moon. The north node is where the moon emerges from the southern declination into the northern declination above her, in her orbital plane, where her orbital plane intersects with the ecliptic. That's where we get the nodes. And as she rises up from the south side of that into the northern declination from that, that's where the north node of the moon is. And this is a symbol of the moon moving out into the world, moving into this space of manifestation, where she is full of the energy and the potency that she has been developing through the process of this kind of baptismal gestation that takes place between the south node to the north node as she goes through her orbit. So she's emerging from the north node, and that's the very first thing that happens because this is the solar eclipse. It's just a couple degrees away, as you can see there on the chart. And then immediately after that, the next thing that she comes into contact with is Saturn. And Saturn has gone retrograde and moved back into the sign of Pisces, and is going to be there in Pisces until February of 2026. So we have Saturn back in Pisces again. And for all of those that are sensitive to Saturn in Pisces, maybe you have Saturn in Pisces and you're going through a Saturn return, or maybe you have Saturn in one of the other water signs or something like that. This is going to be a moment for you to reflect on how Saturn is connecting with you and your life. Saturn signifies things like restrictions and boundaries and time and patience and all those kinds of words that deal with the upper boundary of our experience. After the moon connects with Saturn, she'll move on and then make a connection, a conjunction, a bodily conjunction as we call it, with Neptune in the sign of Aries. And Neptune is a very, it's a planet with a lot of nuance to it. And Neptune, we think about Neptune as qualities of illusion, illusoriness, delusion. We think of Neptune as dreams, intuition, romance, the movement of emotional energy in a fluid and relational kind of way. And the shadow side of Neptune can be where there's so much of that we are blinded to the realities in front of us. But in my assessment of the moon in a direct conjunction with any of the planets, when we're dealing with that exact point, it's dealing with the moon pulling into herself and resourcing herself from the most pure form of energy of each of those planets. So we think of, this is just a metaphorical way of thinking it. I'm not trying to say that Saturn as a planet is transferring his planetary energy to the moon. I realize that they're very different distances in the sky. I'm talking about metaphorically in the way that these planets interact with our lives. And so as the moon passes these planets, she's going to pick up the light of these planets. and then carry that forward in her journey. So she passes Neptune, then she goes on to Chiron in Aries. I'm not going to talk a lot about Chiron right now. I don't usually do that in these lunation videos. I tend to stick with the major planets, sometimes even just the traditional planets, but I'm using the outers this time. But Chiron is a powerful planet dealing with healing, with wounds and trauma, and the way that we relate to the wounds and trauma in order to process our healing. So I'll just leave it there with Chiron. The moon moves past Chiron, and then she comes into Taurus. Now, the interesting thing about her time in Taurus is there's no other major planet in Taurus while she's traveling through Taurus. So this means that the moon is traveling through her exaltation while she is not coming into contact with any other planet. And this means that she is solo and solitary, and all the connections that she's making with the planets will be by aspect while she is in Taurus. She will not be making any bodily conjunctive aspect with any planets in Taurus. Then she will travel on to Gemini, where she meets up with Uranus, the planet of innovation, of sudden breakthroughs, of electricity, of shocks, of revolution. What are some of the other things that Uranus represents? Identity and ego itself can sometimes be thought of as a Uranian construct. So the moon is going to pass through Uranus in Gemini, an air sign, which is ruled by Mercury. And Gemini deals with things that are small and granular, analytical, tiny pieces of information, or even if they're not tiny, they're subsets of information, like the analytical process of breaking things down. And Uranus in this sign of Gemini for the next 7 years or so is going to be signifying these revolutionary breakthroughs through the we could even go as far as down to say revolutionary breakthroughs in quantum states. And, you might think of quantum computing as the next big computing revolution to take place after AI and the graphical processing units that are fueling the AI revolution. From Uranus and Gemini, the moon moves on to Cancer, where she meets with Jupiter. Jupiter is in its exaltation in Cancer, and Cancer is the domicile of the moon. This is where she has a lot of power. Jupiter has a lot of influence, and we can see that these two, and this is true for whenever the moon is meeting Jupiter in Cancer for the next, up until next summer in 2026, she's going to be doing this every month. This is a time for her to renew an abundance of light and energy and to bring in good fortune into her field of expanse. From Jupiter, she will move on, or she has moved on, because what I'm talking about is what's happened over the last 2 weeks. Then she has met Venus, and Venus is in Leo. She is a morning star phase, which means that she rises before the sun in the morning. And in the sign of Leo, a fire sign, is a morning star. Venus is very non-binary gendered. This is her most masculine phase in one of the most masculine signs. It is the domicile of the sun. And so we think of this, if you were to look back at Greek statues, Roman statues, you might be able to find pictures of the bearded Venus. The bearded Venus is signifying Venus in her most masculine phase, which is this phase of Venus, the morning star in Leo. Aries and Sagittarius are also masculine fire signs, but I think of the sheer solar expansiveness of Leo as really embodying the true sublime levels of masculinity that Venus can really embrace and integrate into her experience. And so that's why I say that the Venus in Leo as a morning star is one of her most masculine phases. So that the moon is going to come into contact with this very masculine Venus, and the moon and Venus have this mother-daughter kind of relationship that takes place. And when Venus is in this masculine phase, it's very much like the moon is connecting with, we would say a non-binary or even a transgender person if we were thinking in terms of human qualities. But this is the moon connecting with Venus in a phase of Venus that speaks to less of the mother-daughter dynamic and almost more of a mother-son kind of dynamic, if we were to think of it that way. It's the kind of dynamic that brings about a lot of deep creativity. Mother-son relationships have a very dynamic relationship, sometimes contentious, oftentimes, very devoted. So, we can think of that experience and that expression coming out as the moon transits across Venus. And then finally, she has come now again onto the 21st. I'm not sure when this video is going to release, but on the 21st, she will come into contact with the sun in Virgo. So let me just go ahead and move the chart forward day by day so you can actually see the movement of the moon as she does this. It'll take about 14 days for that to happen. So let's just step through this. So first the moon moves, like we said, into Aries. Then she's going to be stepping across here into Taurus, where we see her solitary in Taurus. Then she moves across Uranus into Gemini. Then we come in here into Cancer. And just for those of you who aren't tracking it, this is where we have the moon right here. I kind of messed up my arrow, but right there is the moon. So again, stepping forward another day, she moves into Leo. And the thing about Leo that's interesting is the moon and Venus actually come into contact on the very last minute of the last degree of Leo. At least that's according to this software. I'm using Lunar Astrology. It's a great software. I highly recommend it. I've been using it for a couple of years, I think. Great piece of software, and that's what this software says. Other ephemerists may say something different, or if you're using your own paper, a manual ephemeris, you might calculate that differently. But I have it. I have the moon and Venus in conjunction on 2959 Leo. So then the moon moves into Virgo, where she comes into contact with the sun for the solar eclipse. And here we have her there with the sun at 29 degrees, 5 minutes of Virgo. So this is, again, the anaretic degree of Virgo. And so that's where we come up to with the new moon. And the new moon being a solar eclipse in Virgo, this is a time that really speaks about the kinds of resettings and newness that speak to this earthy quality that Virgo brings. Or Virgo brings a different kind of earthiness from Capricorn or Taurus. The earthiness of Virgo is just really plain and matter of fact, and it's easy to change. Virgo is a mutable sign, so we think of positions are easy to change, things are fluid, we can change our situation, and the moon is really bringing in the possibilities of moving forward with things that may be completely opposite to directions that you've been going. So it doesn't have to be that way, but if you're thinking of completely making a 180 in your life, this might be the time to start planning that and planting that seed and planting the intentions around this new moon. And because it's an eclipse, this is a magnifier day, at least in the traditions that I follow. And a magnifier day is a day where the actions that we do are magnified. And it's really important for us to put our intention into what we're trying to accomplish in this life, hopefully for the good of ourselves, for the good of our loved ones, for the good of the planet. We can think of this as the compassion of the sun and the moon, coming together to, bring about the manifestations of fortune in our lives. So then, so now we're moving on from the 21st, we're moving on into the future. And we can see that the sun and moon, both together, because they were in the anaretic degree, shift into Libra, we can see here, with Mercury. So the moon is past Mercury, come into contact with Mercury by bodily contact, and the sun is not far behind. And so the sun is going to be in Libra. After this solar eclipse, the sun moves into Libra, and the sun will be in Libra for the full Libra season of about a month. But the moon is going to move on relatively quickly in just a couple of days as she moves across that. Then she comes into contact with Mars in Scorpio. And she meets Mars in the 2nd degree of Scorpio, which is very close to the 3rd degree of Scorpio, which is the precise degree of her fall. So as she moves through the last part of Libra and the first part of Scorpio, this is called the Via Combusta, the burnt path, the road of fire. And it is the road of fire because in the very middle of it is the fall of the moon, the exact point of the fall of the moon, which is opposite the exaltation of the moon, which happens in the 3rd degree of Taurus. So this burnt road, this burnt path is basically a lunar day before that point and a lunar day after. So 12, 13 degrees before that degree and 12, 13 days after. In general, most astrologers just talk about the 15th degree of Libra to the 15th degree of Scorpio. But it's really because that the fall of the moon is right in the middle. It's the lowest point for her energy. However, Mars is in his domicile, and Mars is on Team Moon. Mars is part of the nocturnal sect. And so this is like, if we think of political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, I'm not sure which one the nocturnal, the diurnal would be, but these are just two different kind of parties or sects of the SECTS of the chart. Mars is on Team Moon. And so because this is the domicile of Mars, and Mars is on Team Moon, as the moon comes into contact with Mars, close to the fall, close to her fall, in my view, this is Mars being the most gracious host, the most generous host, and really empowering and filling the moon with all of the scorpionic, dark energy of passion and sensuality and, all the kinds of things we think about Scorpio and Mars. These are what get transferred to the moon. And it's a really passionate, powerful moon that I believe is part of this experience of her being in her fall. She is her most receptive in her fall. It's like being the most submissive. It's where she's able to receive the most. So she's not really dishing a lot out, but because Mars is in his domicile there, he's able to offer the moon an incredible amount of support as she moves through that Scorpio position. And then on to finishing Scorpio, she moves into Sagittarius. Again, no planets for bodily conjunction with the moon in Sagittarius, but she shares a reciprocity with Jupiter. The sign of Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and the sign of Cancer is ruled by the moon. So they are in what is known as mutual reception right now. So it's a very good position for both planets. They're in a condition which is known as aversion. I'm not going to get into the details of that now. Possibly in an upcoming class or course that I'm going to be offering. But the moon and Jupiter, because of their mutual reception, are able to find like this secret pathway to each other and to find a way to support each other despite the fact that they're considered incapable of seeing each other in the chart right now. So this is a good place where she kind of finds some rest and respite from the travels that she's been going through. And then she will move on into Capricorn, which is the exaltation of Mars. It is the domicile of Saturn. There's not going to be any planets for her to meet by bodily conjunction here either. We can just advance the moon through Capricorn. We'll see that her next planetary conjunction happens with Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. Pluto is the lord of the underworld. And so when the moon meets with Pluto, this is like the moon going into the underworld. We can think of the myth of Demeter. Maybe we think of there's the play Hades Town. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the play Hades Town, where we talk about the tale of Persephone and Hades. Hades and Pluto are the lord of the underworld. One is a Greek term, one is a Roman term. So anyways, the moon coming into contact with Pluto. Pluto signifies things like reinvention or reincarnation, rebirth, taking things down that are old to bring up things that are new. It's this death and rebirth process, the death and renewal that happens cyclically. For the sun, it's an every year process. Every year the sun goes through this kind of birth and renewal process, but every aspect of life goes through this kind of death and rebirth and renewal process. It's a very secular process, and the moon coming into connection with Pluto is really highlighting this experience in our lives. It's a time for us to connect with the phoenix within. How do we connect with the part of ourselves that we need to surrender onto the burning pyre and let that rise again as a phoenix? So that is the Pluto coming into contact with, the moon coming into contact with Pluto in Aquarius. Then she continues on through Pisces. She'll come into contact with Saturn, Neptune, and then back to her opposition as the full moon, as we will have the full moon in Aries later in the Libra season. This will be the sun in Libra and the moon in Aries. So that is the full cycle of the moon through the past 2 weeks up to the current solar eclipse that we're in now, and then on into the next 2 weeks. And I hope this helps you to think about how you might move forward over the next 2 weeks. Reflect back over the last 2 weeks and see how the movements of the moon worked with your life. This is kind of a way to go to do a 2-week retrospective. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but just think back over the last 2 weeks. You can go day by day of the moon's movements, and how was your life, and how did you experience what was going on for you and the moon's connections? And then project that forward for the next 2 weeks and think about what the moon is doing over the next 2 weeks as she moves on her journey from new moon to full moon. All right, so that's been the new format video. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've watched this far, I definitely hope you've enjoyed it. But please do, if you feel like it, check out the other video and leave some comments and let me know which format you like better. This format or the more narrative format, or both. Maybe you like both and you are interested to see the chart every month and the a more narrative video every month. So looking forward to hearing your comments. Let me know how the moon is working for you in your lives over the last 2 weeks, over the next 2 weeks. I'm interested to hear how this is impacting you. Feel free to check out the description below for links to my website. I have positions open for readings and consultations. I also do coaching and mentoring. So mentoring is like astrological mentoring and tutoring. I also do mentoring for other disciplines that my coachees are engaged in. And my coaching is life coaching, career coaching, or simply needing to work through the situations of life in a way that connects you to the astrological symbols. I also work with plant medicines. So if you're interested in exploring plant medicine work, please feel free to reach out to me. You can do that on my website. You can find the link in the description below, but it's also pretty easy to remember, www.ryan- and that's the hyphen, not the big long dash, but just the hyphen, ryan-hunt.com. So feel free to head over there, and I have downloads for sale, articles that you can download, and you can book sessions with me if you'd like. So looking forward to hearing from you in the comments below or in a session with you soon.